can politicians redeem themselves after they've been caught up in a sexual scandal? Before we get to our discussion on redemption, why don't we watch a quick video so we can refresh your memory on all of these sex scandals that have taken place.
Disgraced former Congressman Anthony Weiner getting a warm welcome from voters today as he launches his political comeback.
Thank you very much, sir.
Weiner campaigning for New York City mayor, trying to move past the scandal that led to his resignation from Congress 2 years ago. Those racy photos and messages he sent to women through social media.
Look, I made some big mistakes, and I know I let a lot of people down. But I've also learned some tough lessons. I'm running for mayor because I've been fighting for the middle class and those struggling to make it my entire life. And I hope I get a second chance to work for you.
More recently, I've experienced how none of us go through life without mistakes. But in their wake, we can learn a lot about grace, a God of second chances, and be the better for it. In that light, I humbly step forward and ask for your help in changing Washington.
It was Election Day in South Carolina, and the special election in South Carolina's 1st congressional district has been called by the Associated Press for, drumroll, Republican Mark Sanford. The scandal-plagued former South Carolina governor, Sanford previously held the seat for 3 terms. He defeated Democrat Elizabeth Colbert Bush, the sister of comedian Stephen Colbert.
So are we starting to be more forgiving toward people who have been involved in sex scandals, whether they're politicians or any other type of public figure? Jimmy, what do you think? Why don't you weigh in?
Well, I was just talking with Bill Clinton, and he says yes. I mean, of course, ever since Bill Clinton, I think that was the sex scandal that stopped making sex scandals, because people realized
it was so unsexy.
It was A, unsexy, B, she was chubby, right? Because so people, and then
unlike him, who was in
yeah, total false.
But like my theory was like if he would have been with a supermodel, it wouldn't have been a scandal. You're not gonna, the Republicans aren't going to go, hey, we caught Bill Clinton having sex with a supermodel.
It would have been an achievement. They would have been impressed with the Democrats for once and their virility.
You're right, kind of like how people still admire John F. Kennedy because he was with Marilyn Monroe, kind of like that kind of thing. Yeah. So I think it was Bill Clinton. I think it was because the Republicans overreached and they impeached him for it. When people, and that's when people say Bill Clinton can compartmentalize his life. I think he showed that American public can compartmentalize their life too, because they can go, hey, this guy could be a sleazeboss with sleeping with women, but he can also be a good president, so let's keep him as president. And I think that's when it's kind of stopped killing you as a politician.
I think it's also just exhausting. As a 37-year-old single female, I'm so sick of hearing about these married men who are able to date on the side. Like, it's just irritating to me. And then logistically, like, I'm like, how did you fit that into your schedule? I can barely get through my Facebook news feed.
That's actually the best point, because I always think about that whenever I do hear about politicians having sex with like a mistress. You have a wife, you have children, you're a politician, you have tremendous responsibilities, and at the same time, you're banging someone on the side. But I guess the question is, do you, John, feel that the majority of Americans do believe that politicians can compartmentalize their lives, that they can, be great politicians and have, a sketchy love life on the side?
I don't know that there's any actual trend across all Americans in regard to all politicians. I think that it's very different based on whether or not they're talking about a Democrat, they're talking about a Republican, if the person's married or not, if they were committing crimes or not. Like, it's one thing to hook up with an intern or something like that.
Wait,
and that's,
I'm sorry.
What's that? No. I'm not saying it's okay, but I'm saying there he's making some sort of ethical problem there. He's betraying his wife. Like, that's the crime. Mark Sanford or something like that, spending money. Yeah, I suppose. Maybe that's not a good example. But I think that if it's purely an ethical problem, I think that that's very different than someone who actually breaks the law in doing what they do. I think that then maybe people should care. But I think that the idea that because Anthony Weiner Snapchats a picture of his crotch or something like that, that makes him a less efficient legislator, or maybe he won't be as good of a fighter for the values of New York voters, I think that that's kind of ridiculous.
I think you're also dismissing 51% of the voters by saying it's okay for him to be sending pictures of himself to another woman. I think he himself is sabotaging his campaign potentially with female voters. I think he's cock blocking himself.
What? Women Snapchat photos of themselves all the time.
So let me
if
jump
Snapchat
in.
was only one way.
Let me jump in with that, because
it's like a question of reverse sexism.
But I do notice a difference between male voters and female voters. I get the sense that male voters are much more willing to brush someone's sexcapades aside and focus solely on how he or she governs. So I do worry that women focus a little too much on the sex scandal and not enough on the policy. What do you think about that, Katie?
Well, it's a confusing subject and one that's very frustrating. I mean, you can't look at any political leader from Martin Luther King Jr. on who hasn't had some type of affair. So I think in general, it's sort of sad that our greatest world leaders aren't necessarily living up to what they say they will in their own personal lives. I agree that it's a complete difference whether you're cheating on your wife versus having an affair with an intern, because that can be illegal and it is unprofessional to be fooling around with someone who is lower than you in status in your own office.
Maybe I'm the bad guy, but when I really think about how society is constructed and how, in reality, monogamy is a societal expectation. And a lot of people get attracted to power. So you're this politician, you have a tremendous amount of power, and a lot of times someone's fidelity is based on how many opportunities he has, right? So as powerful politicians, they have more opportunities to, wander outside their marriage and to do things that they probably shouldn't do. But why shouldn't they do it? It's because society tells them they shouldn't do it. I'm not giving them a pass. I'm just saying that
I don't mind if it's not with our tax dollar. Like, the problems that I have are things like, I don't want to be spending my tax dollars on your beautiful hotel room. I don't want to be spending my tax dollars on having to pay for a stupid suit like with Clinton. Like, that was so irritating that we were going to have to, pay money for that. Affairs are completely different, and I have no interest in hearing any more about it, particularly because they're not very attractive people that they necessarily are getting together with anyway, so it's not really scintillating porn. The intern thing and snapping shots of yourself when you are in a political position, I do have problems with, because I think it sends a message that somehow this is okay to subjugate certain people. That I do have a problem with.
Let me just say this about Mark Sanford. Mark Sanford, I think, could you say it's worse? We're talking about how when a guy does it with an intern, it adds another layer of malfeasance on top of it, right? Because he's breaking other rules besides his commitment to his wife or his girlfriend. But Mark Sanford, right? So, don't you think it's worse when conservatives get caught doing this?
Yes, I like that you're touching on that. Yes.
Because their whole thing is, I'm a better person morally than these Democrats are, and then when they get caught in it, so like Mark Sanford, he's all for family values if it's a second family and they're in Argentina, apparently, right?
You're treated really well.
And
I think that sex scandals should have a huge impact on the politician's re-election or the public's perception of that politician based on what he ran with, what his platform was based on. So if you are a family values guy and you're pointing fingers at Democrats and liberals and saying, oh, look at how they live their lives, they're going to go to hell. Right. I'm against gay marriage. I'm against abortion. Right. All of that. And then you're having sex on the side, when you're in this marriage. No, yeah, definitely you should resign. I think that totally goes against everything that you ran on.
And Mark Sanford also, just to show how less moral he is than, say, Bill Clinton, he actually left his wife for this woman, and he's still with her. He's like touring around on his campaign for Congress. His victory speech, he's standing on stage with Eva Perón right next to him. So, and it's like, that'd be like if Bill Clinton went on tour with Monica Lewinsky. It's like unbelievable that he gets away with this, Mark Sanford.
I know, but that's the whole question here. Why is it that he is able to get away with it? Do you think that he has a chance at redemption? I mean, he is touring around with her.
He is being redeemed.
Yeah.
He's going to be a congressman. So I think he is redeemed. I think when David Vitter, I think it all ended then. When David Vitter got caught, when he showed up on the rolls of the Madam, right? So he was going to see prostitutes, and he got caught, and he didn't resign, and everybody treats him like he's just another member of the Senate. I think that was the tip-off that we don't have to resign anymore. We don't have to do this stuff. Although Anthony Weiner did quit, which I don't think he had to. I think he could have stayed in, and he didn't. But Eliot Spitzer, the reason why sex scandals are dangerous is because they used one against Eliot Spitzer, right? And he was the only guy prosecuting Wall Street at the time, and they used the Patriot Act to catch him getting in bed with a hooker, so they can stop anybody prosecuting Wall Street that way. So it's sad that we have these, this goofy sex hang up. They don't have it in other countries, right?
You just brought up the main problem. The problem is that when other campaigns are using it as a way to distract you from the real issues, like that's the problem, is that like when we get hooked hearing about the sex campaign instead of like what's really going on and what we actually need
Bill
to be
Clinton's
focusing
whole
on.
impeachment was a distraction.
Utterly. That's exactly right.
I think
Yeah.
I want to step in just because one of the reasons that I don't generally care about sex scandals, like I'll use them to attack Republicans if they've been hypocritical, particularly when they're denouncing homosexuality and then they're having homosexual like affairs on the side.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't really care about it because I think there's so many ways that most politicians do not in any way resemble the regular average American. They live apart from Americans, they make way more money, they don't associate with them. But this is one way in that I think they're actually very much like the average person. The average person has a very high percentage chance of cheating during their marriage. I think that most people will send texts or photos or something like that, especially younger people. It's becoming more and more common. That's why Snapchat is like one of the most downloaded apps of the last year or two. And if Anthony Weiner is sending crotch photos, he is in that way like young America. Maybe this is like sad, maybe it is. I don't want people to be cheating in their marriage or in the office. But I think that this is one of the ways that the politicians are actually like the people that they're governing.
Right, and again, it goes back to what monogamy is and why it came about in society. It's a societal expectation. I mean, there have been a number of scientific studies, dating back to, hundreds of years ago that show that, this notion that you have this biological tendency to be monogamous is not necessarily true. I mean, a lot of times they think women are that way, but...
Could you do me a favor? Could you call my wife?
I know, I was going to say, you were really making it hard for us.
Everyone go cheat on your relationship. No, but that's the thing. I mean, we have these conversations about what people do in their personal lives, and we love to judge people based on what they do in their personal lives. And in the case of Republicans, we should judge them because they judge us.
Right.
So it's good to point out the hypocrisy.
I don't think
but
there's
I
any
feel
difference
like
between Republicans and Democrats. I mean,
But there's a huge difference. There's a huge difference because Republicans spend their entire campaigns judging the lives of other people, telling us what gays can and can't
that
do,
part I agree
telling
with.
us what women can and can't do with their own bodies. So yes, I'm going to judge them if they're in a sexual relationship with someone else while they're married.
And not judge Democrats who are still spending your same tax dollars.
But those are two completely different issues. If they are illegally spending tax dollars so they can have their affair, of course they should be prosecuted for that. But we're just talking solely about what they're doing with their sex lives. Yeah, the morality
the
of it.
hypocrisy. So it's the kind of the point I made, that it's more hypocritical for a Republican or a conservative to do it than it is for a liberal, and because liberals don't go around judging other people's sexual lives.
Exactly.
I feel like you guys are being too nice to our Democratic candidates. I mean, I agree on
We
the
still
Republican
make fun-
side, but
Yeah.
but I don't think that they're so liberal or so thoughtful.
So do you think
necessarily.
that
We still make fun of Anthony. I mean, I still rip all of them.
I think you guys are being. I'm an ardent Democrat, but I think you're
And
being
the-
very
So do you
generous.
think someone like Anthony Weiner should resign based on the pictures that he
No.
sends to some
No.
woman?
No.
Okay.
Oh, look at that! Can I tell
I
you?
don't. I mean, I don't think that he had to resign over that. I think he did need to acknowledge it and correct the issue.
And he did.
And when he said he made some big mistakes, I was like, you're flattering yourself a little too much.
I thought so too. That was like maybe
I made some
a
big
small,
But
maybe a medium mistake. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a medium.
I don't wanna talk about Anthony
who is the
Weiner's
rule?
Weiner.
Can I tell you who the real victim in this Anthony Weiner scandal is? It's got to be the Tonight Show audience, right? I gotta say, his name is Weiner. That's his name. His name is Weiner.
All right, one final question about this topic, because I'm curious what you guys think about the surveillance state we live in. With the internet, with the advancements in technology, with the fact that we have government officials looking into our emails and keeping track of what we're doing, I mean, do you think we're finally going to get to a point where people are just going to be so desensitized by these sex scandals and by, whatever people are doing in their personal lives?
Well, I said on the comment room, I think you actually were on this one, that I think what we should do as a society is everybody should take a naked picture, a naked video. We simultaneously release them all on the same day, and then we can get over it as a society. No one will care anymore because we've all seen each other. It's like going to like a topless beach or something. After 10 minutes, boobs don't matter.
It's so depressing when you go to a topless beach or something because the people who are topless are unattractive. I really don't need more photos.
Most of these photos would
America.
be.
You haven't been to the topless beach in Maui, because I have, and I thought it was going to be old fat guys and lesbians, and it wasn't. It was. Although it was the first time I was called sir by someone younger than me. That was horrible. I was laying there. There's
I
these
like that this conversation is now shifted to you being called sir.
So I'm laying there, two 18-year-old girls, beautiful, late night. They go, I hear, excuse me, sir. You are not fucking talking to me. Excuse me, sir. Me? Yes. Okay, what? And this is like 15 years ago. I wasn't, I was still kind of young. They go, do you know what time it is? I go, yeah, it's time for me to leave.
I
it's time for
kiss
me to leave.
bouncers when they cart me. I like give them a huge, I'm like, thank you so much. This makes my day.
All right. Well, we're off on a little bit of a tangent. Let's go back to the sex scandals, although I would love to tell personal stories.
You ever been to a topless beach?
I have not been to a topless beach, no.
Do your parents watch this show?
My mom watches the show, but I really have not been to a topless beach. So anyway, one final thing. What about Eliot Spitzer? Because, Eliot Spitzer, as you mentioned, Jimmy, he really did fight the Wall Street bad guys. And he was really looking out for the best interests of, the middle class and the working class. And I would love to see him get reelected and have some form of power. Do you think that there's ever a possibility for him to get
I think there is a possibility for him, especially if there's another bank thing that happens, which is going to happen, right? Because they're bigger than they were before and they're going to fail again. But I think the thing that people really hate Eliot Spitzer for, or kind of hold against him, which I do, was the fact that he made his wife stand next to him at that press conference. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And everyone felt sorry for her, which I did. I'm like, why is she standing there? That's when that conversation started. People were like, why do they have to stand there?
He also broke the very law that he was working on.
Yes.
I mean, it was he and Clinton have this more similar personality where they're so brilliant and they do see themselves as above the law. And it's so frustrating for the rest of us because they're so good at protecting us in other ways with those laws. So that's why it's irritating. I mean, that was a real Achilles heel that he has.
Oh my God. Yes, it certainly was.
I think that he definitely has a chance. I think that if you do something like John Edwards or something like that, where obviously it shows that you have no real care for the people that you're supposed to love, that I think leads to a lot of negative feelings towards a person. But in most political campaigns, we know who wins. The person with the name recognition, the person who can raise the most money. He has both of those things. I think that he's got a good chance.
John Edwards denied his own kid, though. That was his fatal flaw there, because she was pregnant. Said, it's not my kid, so you can't do that, and then get back. Yeah, that's pretty gross when you deny your own kid.
Guy. I mean,
I think also that these young women who involve themselves with these men, I do think it is also sad. There are so many other ways that you can get power, and there's so many other ways that you can have lovely sex. So I think on both ends they end up demeaning themselves, and I feel sad that they become the brunt still.
As I get older, I'm glad those women are around.
All right, we got to take a very quick break. I will end by saying, Catie makes a great point about these women. Ashley Dupre loved being involved in the Eliot Spitzer sex scandal. She tried to cash in on it. She got her own column for the New York Post. And of course, the only reason why that happened was because Murdoch wanted to make sure that Ashley Dupre was still in the media as Eliot Spitzer was trying to deal with this scandal. It was disastrous.